Hello, this is Michael Yeager bringing you another class from Contemporary Teaching, and the website is CEUProCourses.com. I thank you very much for being here, and I hope you'll find this course on smoking cessation interesting and helpful. I've used it in my private practice since 1979 when I stopped a 4.5 pack a day habit, Marlboros is what I was smoking, up in Leadville, Colorado. And I had been smoking that maybe for about 10, 15 years, and I was coughing like my mother, and I didn't want to cough like my mother. It was horrible. And I had tried the smoking cessation program at the hospital up there in Leadville, and I call it the scare tactics approach, where they just scare you into the bad things going on with your body. And that worked for a couple of weeks, and then I went back to smoking and just got back into it full-blown right away. And so this is my second attempt. So I already knew there were some things I did not want to happen for me when I was just deciding about this. The first time when I stopped smoking, I had tremendous amount of canker sores in my mouth. It was horrible, a lot of pain. I also lost a lot of energy. I would just drop off like that on a regular basis. And so I said I didn't want either of those things to happen for me. And so I'd stop, but those things couldn't happen. And I didn't want to become an obnoxious non-smoker. I'd been around non-smokers before, and they were pretty obnoxious. And I didn't want to be like one of those people. So there's no way I would be like someone I didn't like. So I had to adjust how I managed all this. And I'd also, it is in 80, I think, is when I took what's called the Silva method. It used to be called the Silva Mind Control. Jose Silva, great dynamic course. If there's any course that I recommend to people, and I've got a home study on that as well, is the Silva course. It's just marvelous, practical, good. It's talking about meditation and affirmations and lots of good stuff. So I had done that course. I had read a book by Doug Boyd called Rolling Thunder, Native American shaman who had brought the thunder with him. Wherever he talked, there was thunder. And I saw him over at U of H, and yes, that happened there too. And so what I liked about Rolling Thunder was that he didn't make a big deal out of what he did. He was just in touch with nature and the spirit, and the thunder was his calling card, and it was more matter of fact. So I said, yes, not smoking has to be matter of fact. And so I had that idea in my head. I also knew that the mind is an obedient servant, and it does not hear the word don't or no. So I could not have that in the title or anything to do with it. Like I couldn't have no smoking or not smoking or anything like that, because the mind just hears smoking. I looked at the reasons for me to stop, and what I finally came up with is that being smoke-free would be easy for me. Now, I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. I stopped those in 73, and when I stopped those habits, I looked at how easy that was for me in comparison to smoking. And so I said, I just looked at my energy. I said, I've got to have something that matches this energy. So, and I've lied to myself about other things, so I'll lie to myself about this and say, well, being smoke-free will be easy for me. Because that was a total lie when I first told it. Total, absolute lie. Didn't even believe it for anything. But I said it anyway, because I'd lied to myself before, so I could lie to myself about this. So that was another key ingredient in this process. Not even believing much that the process would work. But I started anyway. I went through it anyway. I went through the motions anyway. In my recovery program, I learned about faking it to make it. So this was one of those fake it to make it things. And so I had also done some sales work, and so I learned about goal setting. And so I set a goal of 30 days out. And so I said, I can do this in 30 days. Great. And so if I'm willing to affirm that being smoke-free is easy for me, if I'm willing to look at this as a choice, if being smoke-free is a choice, it's a lot easier than a have to. So the word choice is important. And then I realized that every time I smoked, and I was just, now figure this, 4.5 packs a day is about 100 cigarettes a day. And so I was interacting with cigarettes a lot. And so every time I puffed, every time I put a cigarette out, every time I thought about a cigarette, reached for a cigarette, did anything with a cigarette, I used that as a positive. I reframed it. I said, that's what I'll use to reframe, or for me to state for me what's true about being smoke-free. And so I just affirmed that being smoke-free is easy for me every time I lit up, took a drag, or did anything. And yes, you smoke while you're doing the program. Because smoking is, yes, a habit and all that stuff, and it's an addiction, yes, and all that stuff. And I say it that way on purpose, because I also know that the mind is more powerful than any addiction, and that it has dominance over everything, the mind does, once I give it that. And so I began to use the affirmations of being smoke-free is easy for me. I began to use visual imagery that I learned from a lady named Shakti Gawain, her book called Creative Visualization. I know this stuff is dating me. That's all right. I don't mind being dated by it. Good stuff, still to this day. And so I applied her principles of visual imagery. I was not a hypnotherapist at the time. I've since become that, but I knew about visual imagery from Shakti Gawain. And so I give her credit for teaching me what I learned about that. And so what I did initially was I just smoked and told myself these affirmations and didn't really pay much attention to it other than that. And at 30 days, I was in Denver, and I was walking down the street, and I was smoking a cigarette. This was supposedly my last day, my last day was the day before. This lady saw me that I knew, and she said, Michael, weren't you supposed to stop smoking by now? And I said, well, yes. And I got indignant, of course. And she said, then why haven't you? And I noticed that 5,483,000 excuses came into my mouth in 1 second about why I hadn't stopped smoking. And then she said, Michael, do you believe in all that stuff you talk about, the mind, how powerful it is? And of course I got indignant again and said, yes, I do. And then she did the most powerful thing that anyone has ever done for me, from then until now. She said, then do it. And turned around and walked off. Just do it. That's all. Just do it. Not in a negative way, but in a forceful way. And so I did that. I reset the goal another 26 days longer, and realized that my mind just needed a little bit more time in order for me to do this thing. And so on that 26th day, that was 56 days into it, I stopped smoking easily and effortlessly. Haven't had a cigarette since then. And there's not a good time to stop, and there's not a bad time to stop, I've learned. And so now begins the story of how this process works. It has not been trial and error experimentation, in that it worked. I had the principles of what worked prior to putting this program together. I simply put it together this way, and I've been able to teach thousands of people to stop since then. I've learned hypnotherapy, so I am a hypnotherapist. Also, I use energy work with what's called EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, and TFT, Thought Field Therapy, tapping sequences that are very rapid therapies, and there's a bonus chapter on that at the end of the book. And so I began to just affirm with people to set me a date. But also, I had them write down why their life is going to be worse when they stop smoking. And nobody says, oh yes, it'll be worse. They think there's nothing worse about stopping smoking. I said, well, if you smoke because you were anxious, now you will be anxious and nothing will stop your anxiety. Now you'll be fearful and nothing will stop your fear. Now it will be your discomfort and nothing will stop your discomfort. If they smoke because they were uncomfortable or anxious or fearful, they'll have nothing to do in their break time if they smoke during breaks, or after coffee, or after food, or after sex, or whatever it happened to be. They would have nothing to replace it with. So at first look, it looks like your life would be worse, because you won't have anything to do if you're not doing those activities. And so once I have sort of educated them to take a look at why their life would be worse, they're able to write down at least 2 or 3 things that are pretty significant for them about why their life will, not maybe, but will be worse for them. And then I point out that is why you smoke. Right there is why you smoke. It's not because you're physically addicted. It's not because you have a long habit. It's not because life is a certain way. It's right there. If you think your life will be not good at all, because if you stop smoking, you would have to experience or wouldn't experience that particular thing, whatever they are. And so that's their reason to smoke. Then write down why you think, and this is vague on purpose, just maybe, sort of, your life would be better. Very vague like that, because that's all it is. It's going to be very vague. They've never done it before, like this. They have no idea how the life will be. They have some vague concept that it might be better. So just write down the vague concept of why you think your life just might be better. So now you have a vague hope that you're going to go towards. And then write down all the triggers, like coughing, getting in the car, getting out of the car, driving the car, going right before you go to sleep, waking up, after sex, food, going to a movie, out of the movies, because in no times you can smoke anywhere, so all those things were included. And so I have people write all those triggers down so they can get clear about all the different things that set them up for a cigarette. And what's interesting about triggers is that once they're installed, then they work all the time. And it doesn't take much to install a trigger. You just have to put your focus on it, and usually unconsciously, and then it becomes a thing that you do when you are in a relationship to that particular thing, of a look or a glance or a movement or whatever it happened to be that's your trigger, like a movie or coffee or something like that, be triggers. And so now they have that information about themselves. And once that information is in place, and they're pretty clear about what that information is, then we go into the process of systematically removing those attachments, because they've created their relationship to cigarettes. Because at one time in their life, they had no relationship to cigarettes at all. It just didn't exist. And so over time in their life, to watching parents or adults smoke, or their friends smoke, they begin to develop a relationship with cigarettes. And at some point, somebody said, stopping smoking is difficult, and you shouldn't do it. And they didn't pay attention to it because they continued to smoke. And then when they came up to stopping smoking the first time, they found out, because of their belief it's difficult, it was difficult. Not because it is difficult, but simply because it was difficult. And that's an important distinction to make there. And to help them see that at one time they had no relationship with cigarettes at all, only to have developed a relationship with cigarettes that helped them pre-decide how they would be if they did not smoke. And I have them take a look at their friends and families and other people that have stopped smoking, and what is their bad press they learned from them about being a non-smoker or being smoke-free. And to explore those messages that they learned, and to notice how much they believed in them, the messages. Then I asked them to take a look at the media and many of the books on addiction and why cigarettes were so difficult for people to stop, and look at all the bad press that you've read about and you've believed that tell you it's a difficult thing. And so you've got all this media going on, all these experiences, all these what are now called, from hypnosis I learned the term, internal proof statements that life will be difficult, because now you've got all this evidence for you. And that's what's helping affirm the difficult nature of this. And all that is a thought. Just your thinking about it. It's a thought. And so if your thoughts are creating this level of attachment, then it also is true that there's another set of thoughts that will create something different, called non-attachment, called freedom from whatever it happens to be you're attached to. Your thought is the only key formula here. And I maintain that it is. I've seen people in the 70s get over their methadone addiction on placebo, and they didn't know they were on placebo. And then when the doctor finally let them know they were on placebo, or they were going to be withdrawing from methadone, although they were only on placebo, they withdrew as if they were on methadone, because that's what they thought about. They thought that they were on methadone, but they withdrew from methadone while they were on placebo. Only placebo. No drug in their body at all. So I also had known that the drug is not near as significant as the mind. Other studies have been done when people have taken methamphetamines and they were really downers, and they were told that they were methamphetamines, that they reacted as if they were methamphetamine, not downers, and vice versa. So the mind, if it's not given the truth, will believe whatever it's told. It is an obedient servant. So I'd seen those experiences as well in my earlier days in counseling. And so I knew that this would work from that particular perspective. So and in the book it also talks about how the inventory that's necessary or helpful in the setup of the smoking cessation program is to get in touch with as many of those, their truths or their falsehoods, their whatever they are, messages that they learned and heard, that they really don't have a concrete, factual piece of information to call it the truth by. It's just something they made up. And to notice when they can, to separate out those, I call them truths with a small t versus truths with a big T. Like gravity would be a big T truth. It'll be hurtful or hard for me to stop smoking would be a small T truth. It's not big T truth, it's just their particular perspective that's true about it. And so what they're doing is slowly over a period of time, while they're smoking, breaking down their relationship to cigarettes. Now, they don't have any anxiety, because every smoker I knew, including myself, had a tremendous amount of anxiety when it came to stopping smoking. And anxiety always comes when you're projecting something into the future. That's 1 second from now and longer. And so if they're smoking, they have no reason to be anxious because they're doing what they're wanting to do then anyway. And so they're free of anxiety when they just said the statement about being smoke-free is easy for me. I can stop being and making those statements about self and their ability to do something that at one time they said to do was impossible for them to do, are now able to make those statements and at least see it and feel it without having to be attached to anxiety, where they can do it, actually do it, and produce that result. So they're slowly learning in this process to develop a way to relate to themselves as a non-smoker, but without the anxiety. So the mind has a reason then to go back into the experience. Anxiety is rough on people. It's rough. And the mind doesn't necessarily want to go back into a situation that produces anxiety. So if you've got a smoker who is okay with their anxiety because now they smoke and everything's fine, and then they think about not smoking and give themselves messages about being smoke-free without the anxiety, then there's a reason for the mind to go back to that, because it's not being pushed away with anxiety, with rough feelings like anxiety. So that's how we're managing that state of consciousness during this period of time when they're still smoking on their way to being a non-smoker. And so they've got their data in mind, they've got their affirmations, they've looked at what it takes for them in order for them to remain a non-smoker, because that's all being addressed as well. And do they deserve it? Asking those particular questions. Do I deserve this? Is it okay for me? Is it safe for me to be smoke-free? And if the answer continues to be yes, then the mental field gets wider and wider and wider, and a reason to play there because it's not threatening. It's simply not threatening. It's possible to see it in your mind and to do it in your mind and achieve the results in your mind without ever doing it physically in reality. And we know that through like the inner game of tennis or the other inner game books that have been written for athletes, and they do things in their mind first. I do remember studying some Vietnam people coming back from Vietnam, and one of them became a very good golfer, one a guitar player. And they did this while they were in their 6x6 holes in the ground in prisoner of war in Vietnam. They said, what I am in charge of is my mind. So they developed guitar playing and they developed golfing in their mind. And they were both fairly good at it when they got out of the hole. They could do it because they had done it in their mind. And the inner game of tennis and other sports where people practice with visual imagery have been able to do that for years. About creating the perfect result in your mind first. This is where it is anyway, and all your physical reality does is eventually match up to that picture. When it matches up to the picture, voila, it's done. It's handled. The mind and the body match, and everything's working perfectly well. There's no anxiety, no force, no problems get in the way, because they don't exist. They're all resolved or moved out of the way before the actual date even hits. And so I knew about those things. And so we're training, the course trains people to focus on that, on achievement, on looking at the triggers. And when the triggers come up, they might still smoke or whatever, simply saying that being smoke-free is easy for me. And every time they smoke or interact with a cigarette, they're saying that. If they're simply going to stop in their mind, and if you want to do it as a fast track, you can certainly do that. Just double it up about how you say to yourself, being smoke-free is easy for me. Because again, I'll say it again, probably many more times, that the mind is an obedient servant. It's a fairly simple statement, but my God, it's difficult to buy into that sometimes, particularly when people have been playing victim of circumstance. Well, I'd quit if only that would happen, or if only this could happen, or if only that would happen, or if I was guaranteed that wouldn't take place, I could do this. All those provided that's get in the way as well, because that's the person is pre-deciding how their behavior will be under certain circumstances and conditions. What I know about the future is that we don't know what's going to happen. We might guess, we might assume, we might think we know, but we don't know until it actually is the very present moment. And so to get out of the future and into the present moment, focus on what you can do right now. And right now I can say being smoke-free is easy for me. That's what I can do. And if you can muster that, then that's a good start. Then you've set a goal in your mind, 30 to 60 days in the future, and you begin to visualize how your life is as a non-smoker. If they feel better about themselves, that's what they want. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to have this positive expectancy about being able to be smoke-free easily and effortlessly. And so it's them also that pumping themselves up the whole time. They have to be willing to pump themselves up and to remember that, yes, they might be lying to themselves about some of these statements, and that's okay. They've lied to themselves about other things. And I say it that way because it's true. We have lied to ourselves about other things and thought they were true. It's doing the very same thing. Anytime you project into the future and say, I will be something, to a degree you're lying because it's not the future. You're just projecting how you want to be or will be at that particular date. This is affirming that. And you're creating that visual imagery. And then you see it in meditation. You just close your eyes, relax, get rid of all the external stimuli, and take some deep breaths from your stomach up. Breathing in and out. And that's the other thing about smoking. You'll notice that your breathing gets better. You'll breathe deeper. So you're just used to breathing deeper and better. And while you're doing your breathing and feeling relaxed and at ease in your favorite chair, doing what you love to do, you create all those words and you put that into your visual imagery, time experience. You feel good about who you are and what you're doing. You begin to see it where your body is taking a photograph of it, so to speak, and it's memorizing that. Oh, this is what it's like to be a non-smoker. So you're programming yourself to be a certain way under certain circumstances and conditions. And it's not threatening because you're still smoking. It's not threatening because there's nothing to threaten you. It's just your mind. And so it takes that threat away and makes it possible for a person on their unaided will alone to go and do that. They're just going to go do that. That's what they become. They become at one with being a non-smoker. They become at one with being smoke-free is easy for me. And so as they move in that direction, they get closer and closer and begin to create a positive expectancy for them getting that result. That's all it can do, nothing more. And so you're using your mind to your fullest potential and moving you in the direction of being the kind of person you say you want to be. You're convincing yourself by the visual imagery and the affirmations over this period of time that you will have what you say you want to have. And let's say you're getting closer to the date. Some people freak out when they get closer to the date. Now they think, oh my God, now I have to do this or it'll be a big test. I say, well, great, let's go into that date and in visual imagery as well. You take your messages about being smoke-free is easy for me. You move into the imagery of being a smoke-free person, and you bring in the first messages that might be difficult for you, and you bring that into the scene in your mind, so to speak. Either a physical representation or just psychologically see it. Doesn't really matter. Just bring it in there. And see yourself on the day that you are being smoke-free. And when you're seeing yourself being smoke-free, first thing to do is just to see yourself being smoke-free on that day. Now construct your full day as a non-smoker. Smoking, enjoying, not enjoying, being with other people, not being with other people, doing something on that day, being smoke-free. And allow yourself just to have that experience. Notice, I use the word notice that you're smoke-free. Notice that you feel good about yourself being smoke-free. Notice that regardless of the emotions or the circumstances in your life, you are smoke-free and you're grateful. Or some affirmation like that they then can bring into themselves and use a grounding stick for themselves that they may not have used before. So as they get closer to the date, they're affirming, they've altered their physical reality. They're seeing themselves in this new mental state, new physical state. Cigarettes become not important to them at all, and they're able to easily and effortlessly move into the behavior called being smoke-free is easy for me. So it's like their internal convincers convince them. And they in fact believe that. And what's important about belief is that it only happens in the head, in between the ears. That's it. There might not be a physical reality outside there at all. With an autopsy, you'd never find being smoke-free. You wouldn't find it. It's not something that's tangible. It's a mental attitude towards something. So by you checking with yourself multiple times throughout the day about your being smoke-free, is that safe for you to do that? Is it comfortable for you to do that? Do you want to do that? And so the answer is yes to all those things. Then you're moving a person in the direction of health and healing. Health and healing. So let's say in the visual imagery, you've got struggles with people that you like or dislike. It's commitment. That's it. It's a commitment. You go back to the book, read what it says, get some ideas again. That's the value of the book, is it can keep you on track. That is an important thing, is to stay on track. For you to become the smoker that you are today, you had to remain on track. To smoke and to believe the way you believed, and your behavioral responses had to be exactly what they were the entire time you smoked in order for you to be where you were when you stopped. Had to have been that way. And so this just sets up another set of circumstances and situations that help you to develop a brand new set of behaviors that you say will work for you. That's the importance of affirmations. Well, you said it would work. That kind of thing. And if they say it'll work, now they're committed to it, that's all that matters. They can go in that direction. So it's a choice. Being smoke-free is a great book. I've also noticed that you can apply it to a lot of things. weight loss, success, empowerment of all kinds, just because it's got universal principles in the book that allow a person to move in those directions. Simply move in those directions. And that's what I think the key of living is about, is the fluidity of everything, is it keeps us moving in the direction that we say are important to us by the nature of our thoughts. So I thank you very much. I hope you find the book helpful, interesting. Do it. I'm not asking you to try to do it. I'm asking you to do it. And you'll be very impressed with the results. Thank you very much, and goodbye.